Yeah, we're on live now. Happy Friday. Yes, and September 11th. I mean, I can't believe it's been 19 years ago today that all of that went down. So it always marks, the year when my baby sister passed as well, because it happened in 2001. So it's just unbelievable how quickly it goes by. But good morning, everybody. Jay Wu here, and
Sean McMillan with Heyler Realty.
Yeah, a little delayed, I guess. But and the show is brought to you by every week Heyler Realty. It's what funds us. It's the engine that drives us to make the impact in the world. And I love connecting with our audience every week. And so I'm very excited for this morning's guest. I don't know if there's a delay, Sean. Are you hearing?
I am getting a bit of a delay. I see your mouth. The words are coming later.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, it's another glitch we have to deal with in technology, and we'll just make the best we can, rolling with this really low Wi-Fi connection lately. I don't know what the deal is, but excited to bring on our special guest, Shani Magosky, to talk about a really intelligent human being, one of my longest term friends here in Los Angeles, and excited to share her wonderful story and how she's been transitioning over the last few months. She has some great things to share with us, I know, and excited to bring it on. But before we do, how are you doing? I know we had our neighborhood council meeting last night, Sean, and I know you're dealing with and tackling with some big homelessness issues in our community as you fight that battle every single day.
Yeah, it's a little bit taxing, that's to say the least. Our meeting, I have to say, the neighborhood council meetings on Zoom are way more efficient. And even though I like all the people and enjoy getting together, I'm pretty happy about just it being Zoom forever, because it's so efficient and we can get a lot more done through an agenda. And I like the way it's handled.
Yeah, agreed. For sure.
Personally, as you noted last night, even with all of the dynamic things that are taking place in our immediate neighborhood and community with planning and potential upzoning, that type of change, the real topic kept swirling around homelessness issues and several different crises spots. And it is a full-time triage. And quite honestly, everybody's outmanned, outgunned. I don't know that we've been particularly governed efficiently in this model. At this point, I don't know that they found the real solutions, but wherever you tend to find a solution, you find as much equal pushback. I was out dealing with some real issues last night late that had to do with some people that were roving and actively breaking into cars, and there was some violence. And so, it's scary. I'm aware of it. I actually signed up as a community officer a while ago. I actually, funny enough, like last week, I'm working out, and all of a sudden Jill walks through the gym and she goes, the police are here for you. And I saw Officer Ballesteros and Officer who's the captain in charge of that program, and they came over and did a little interview. And I guess really that's kind of my level of commitment to what can I do to make this a safe place for us to be, because this issue is pouring everywhere. It's hitting our affluent communities like Chevy Hills and Upper Westwood and Pacific Palisades, Brentwood, et cetera. And then you see it. So I'm like, I just have to be proactive in it. And there's so much misinformation. There's so much. I almost want to tell everybody, whatever you read on Nextdoor, flip a coin if it's right or wrong. That's as much luck as you're going to have. So much misinformation out there. And it's disheartening because it undoes the good works. That's part of the problem.
Well, one thing I know about you through and through, Sean, is that you are a protector first and foremost. And I know that we believe that everybody has a right to a quality of life in whatever area and whatever, capacity. Everybody deserves to have a quality of life. That's for sure. So let me bring in Shani and get our discussion going with her. Excited for that. Hopefully your Wi-Fi stays in there because it's still a little glitchy. So I don't know if it's me or you or what, but there we go.
Well, I've got all 5 bars sitting here.
Hello.
Okay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay and Sean. Great to see you both.
I was just sharing with the audience,
Thank you. It's wonderful to see you this morning.
it's how fast time goes by. It's mind-boggling to me how fast time goes by. But I love sharing you on this platform, and excited for people to know you on a professional level. Because I mean, I know you on both levels, but I'm excited to share your gifts and talents with the audience, and how did we meet? I want to just start with that lovely story.
Yes. Well, I'll start the story and you can interject your version anytime you want. So I moved to LA in the year 2000 and I was working with a guy named Americo at my job. And Americo happened to be roommates with this fabulous guy named Larry. They had been fraternity brothers and best friends at UCLA in college. And shortly after I moved there, Americo invited me to an NFL football watch party at their house down in Hermosa Beach. And I was all about the South Bay already, even though I was living in Santa Monica. Yeah. And so I was like, sure, I love football. I'll come to your party. And I park my car, I come into the party, and like 5 minutes later, this beautiful woman walks in and says, who has the same car as I do? I don't recognize this car. And so I raised my hand, I'm like, that's me. And we started chit-chatting about cars and food and traveling and you name it. And we've been besties ever since.
Rollerblading, hiking, sports, it's like
Yes.
all of it. We're like, oh my God, I found my other half. It was so awesome.
Exactly. And not to date us, but then we also did regular Sex in the City parties at your townhouse.
Yeah, that's true. That show was just such the thing, right? And we had to wait for it to come on. We didn't have a TiVo. We didn't have any recordings or Netflix. Back in the day, you had to wait for Thursday night at 8 p.m. for the show to actually come on, right?
Absolutely.
So we had to sit there and mingle and have dinner before the show actually came on. We all sat around and watched it. And so
yeah,
as we enjoy friendships and food, it was just like a wonderful way to kind of bring it all together.
It was. And one of the things I always appreciated about you was how inviting you were into your circle of friends. You're like, you're cool, you're welcome, everybody meet Shani. And all of a sudden I had this insanely great circle of friends. Usually you move somewhere new and it takes a while to meet good people. Not when you know Jay Woo.
It's like mi casa, su casa, my friends, your friends, mi amigos, you su amigos, right?
Exactly.
That's how it works. So I love that. Well, it's so true. And it just goes to show how long that has been, because it's pretty much a few years after I moved out here that Larry and I started dating as well. And now we just had our 17th year wedding anniversary last weekend. And it's mind-boggling the time going by. So it's pretty amazing. But I know Sean has seen some of your business stuff, which is also cool. And Sean, I know you wanted to ask her in terms of how things are going in that arena. He has a little delay.
Yeah, we kind of. All right, can you hear me okay, Shani? I don't know why, Shani, my Wi-Fi is off. I seem to have all the bars. It seems to be okay on my end. I don't know. But we were discussing, and Jay, having been so close to Jay as many years as I have been, and obviously very much aware of who you are in her life. And I'm really curious as to, what kind of changes have you seen in your business? What kind of things have you seen in these COVID times that are different, and how people are adapting?
Right. Well, let me back up and say my business is the LeaderShift project. LeaderShift being an obvious play on the word leadership. And then I get to use the fun tagline that I help leaders and teams get their shift together.
Shift together. I love that tagline. I know.
That's awesome.
It's like a spin on, the other words.
Exactly. And really, I take shift very seriously, even though it's a tongue-in-cheek thing, because for me, what makes leaders successful in this day and age is their ability to shift. And there's always something to shift, whether it's from going into an office to shifting to working at home because of COVID, or shifting because Amazon has disrupted your business, or or you have to shift your mindset, or shifting your strategy or a tactic, or you're shifting your leadership team because the existing one just doesn't have the skill sets that are right for the current environment of volatility and uncertainty. There's always a shift to happen, and the shift almost always starts here before you go and do the things that you're shifting. And so to answer your question, Sean, what I've seen since March, the first shift was like the holy shit shift. Like, what do we do? Our people don't know how to work from home. And quite frankly, most of what I do prior to COVID was done in person. I do some executive coaching over video conferencing, but most of my work was done live and in person with leadership teams, with, you know, salespeople, with intact teams. And we would do like team communication workshops and team building and strategic planning. And it was always like super interactive and fun, and we'd get up and do exercises, and everything was experiential, because that's how adults learn and grow, not by listening to a freaking lecture, right? They learn by, it's sort of like how medical students learn. They watch one, they do one, and they teach one. And I sort of have that approach when I'm working with folks in the corporate sphere. So anyway, the first shift was stop. Everything we have scheduled is on pause, and leadership teams and HR people and learning and development people had to figure out how to equip their people to work from home successfully. And so there was a bit of a lull in my business for about 3 or 4 months while people wrapped their arms around the new normal. In the past couple of months, thankfully, that's, you know, kind of settled, and most of my clients have decided to move the things that we do together into a virtual environment. And so I've been leading Zoom leadership retreats and Zoom offsites, and leading and debriefs of leadership assessments and culture surveys, and pretty much everything I was doing before, I've been adapting to do over Zoom, including all the fun interactive things that I would do in person. So, and I'll give you just one quick example because I love this one. So one of the things I would do with groups, either as an icebreaker or as a skill building thing, is improv, because we never know what's going to come at us as a professional or human being, right? And so improv skills using yes and, or like all these creative activities that I would toss at people in an in-person workshop. Now I'm doing it online, and I'm calling it Zoomprov.
It's so clever.
Right.
That's pretty cool, actually. We are in a business that we have to think on our feet and problem solve and be strategic and creative every single minute that we're working on something. And so that's a really good exercise for mentally kind of going through things. So I really like that. That's fun. And also to make it kind of, I love brainstorming. I love working off other people's energy. I love teamwork and being in a team versus a solo artist. I love being in a group versus by myself. And so obviously, I think that something like that would help people just kind of bounce off, because the beauty of Sean and I is we go into our listing appointments or buyer consultations together, and we work best in partner work when he says something and I'll finish the thought and vice versa, or we can kind of, you know, right in there, just complete each other's sentences. And it is the beauty of being with somebody for such a long time. 15 years this year, actually. October is next month is 15 years that Sean and I have been partners.
Wow.
I know.
I still beat you in JWU history,
She puts
Sean,
up with all the highs.
Well, you know,
Yes, you do, and that is a badge of honor.
I want to dovetail on something you just said, Jay, which is being able to bounce ideas off each other and brainstorm, and make it clear to those who are still wondering, you can do that virtually. And there are lots of tools that I and other people who are leading virtual team things have adapted for that environment. And part of it is getting a facilitator who knows their stuff. Part of it is using the tools that are available to us now, whether it's virtual whiteboards or, you know, just the modifications of the activities. it works really well. And the important thing is to do them, sort of in waves. And like, we can't do an all-day Zoom call. We just cannot, right? So every 90 minutes, we have to be giving breaks. And even within a 90-minute, sort of meeting period or work period, we've got, every once in a while, it's like, okay, quick stretch break, everybody high five the people in the, to the above them or to the sides of them, like, just like move in your chair to get the energy moving, or else it can become very stagnant.
Right. Well, and it's kind of like that. I love the new commercial right now during the U.S. Open with them doing the stomp, and they have like the ball and all the rhythm is going and everything. And I just want to sit there and like join right in and figure out how they're doing that technology. So it's always so much fun. But
Yep.
well, what can you so that's a really good point in terms of leading teams, and having a good facilitator is probably the key to a lot of that, for sure, because it's kind of like performing surgery on yourself. You just don't do that, right? And so when you have a skilled, experienced facilitator or a consultant that can guide your team through and notice the blind spot, right? And
That's
I
right.
think that so many of us who are, running a company or doing a lot of different activities, we have blind spots about things that may be very detrimental to the organization, how things function, to our agents and the community, et cetera. And so it's to assess and make sure that our blind spot is not bringing everything else down.
100%. One of my very favorite quotes along those lines is, "We're not sure who discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't a fish."
Yeah, discovery, right? That's the key word. What would you advise someone who is, I know there's so many people now kind of thinking outside of the box, realizing their status quo where they were working may not have any longevity or legs. And I notice people are looking into either trying to stay alive in their current business or to shift into creating their own business or starting their own business. Is there any advice you would give to someone thinking about opening up a business or trying to stay afloat?
Absolutely. So I would say a few things. So first of all, if you want to start your own business, like, think about what your passion is, because you're going to be most likely to succeed in something that you have a lot of passion around, because starting your own business ain't easy, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys have shared many stories about Heyler and your careers even before that, because you both are serial entrepreneurs, and it's not easy. So at least if it's something that lights you up, where you can't wait to jump out of bed in the morning to go do, you have a better chance of succeeding. The other thing is, use what's out there. There is so much intel online, and you're not going to be the first one to do what you're doing, most likely. And that doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. It means that you can learn from other people's mistakes. You can learn from other people's successes and not reinvent the wheel. And so it's like, take what's out there, learn from it, take what works for you, and then build your own version of it and find your tribe, right? In this world of the internet, things are democratized. Like, we're not solely able to do business just with people in a certain radius. We can do business with anyone. I mean, I am guessing you guys have buyers for homes on the west side of LA that come to you from all around the world because of your presence online and doing things like Facebook Live. And so think broadly, not about like who's in your box, but who's in your tribe, meaning who has similar interests, who thinks the same way. And it doesn't take a large number of people who have your quirks and your interests to create a business. And I think one of the big mistakes that people make is trying to be all things to all people. And that almost never works, I guess, unless you're Google or Amazon.
Well, they say the
then
riches,
you just
the riches are in
swarm
the
them.
niches. Yeah,
You swarm them with
exactly.
just sheer size and mass. You know, Shani, I'm listening to you, and I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed by the breadth and depth of the conversation. And really, what I've heard interwoven through it all is so much mindset philosophy about how to adapt, how to maneuver, how to be like water and fluid, and understanding where there's resistance and what exercises can do to shift and change energy and how mindset is so critical to really leadership, right? And to being able to handle whatever adversity is coming, because we know the adversity is coming. Doesn't
That's right.
matter what you do, the adversity comes, and nothing worth gaining is without working. It's just not worth it. You know, to earn it is a different feeling. And so I appreciate this, and I'm wondering, like, what kind of influences? I mean, you certainly have been very well read, and obviously have studied what you're doing because you're a master of your craft. It's clear. What are some of the more avant-garde or different type of influences you've had with philosophers and things you may have read? That, I mean, whether it's Vanderchuck or if it's Musashi and the Five Rings. I mean, have you some books like that to share?
Sure. Well, okay. So I would say my influences are partially from my earlier career. I started my career at Goldman Sachs, and lots of really great leaders there influenced me, as well as, you know, it's a great firm, and there were a couple of leaders there whose influence was of the ilk, I don't want to be that way. But by and large, they were, you know, the best practices, and they got into leadership development way before, not just other investment banks and financial companies, but long before most other corporations were. In fact, Goldman so GE and Jack Welch were, you know, sort of like almost are known to have given birth to modern leadership development. And Goldman kind of stole their number 2 person to Jack Welch to build out their Pine Street initiative. So I've been kind of exposed to this for a long time.
Wow.
And then a lot of my inspiration has come from my own trial and errors, managing a sales team at Goldman, running a TV station that was a startup where we had a very deep-pocketed competitor, and that was the first time I was managing millennials, and so I got that multi-generational experience. And
fun.
then after that, I took a company. I was chief operating officer of a company for 5 years that we took from from brick and mortar. It had been based in Washington, D.C. for 30 years, and the owner decided to make it virtual in 2005. I started working for him as a COO in 2006, and we sent everybody home with laptops and shifted the company to an all virtual company kind of well in advance, again, of most. And that has informed a lot of my leadership journey as well. Now, on top of that, and sort of the things that worked well and the things that I completely effed up have all accrued to, you know, help me be the consultant and coach that I am now. In terms of books, my 2 favorite leadership books are not very traditional. One of them is The 4 Agreements, and that was written by Miguel Ruiz, and it's based on Toltec wisdom that's been passed down for, I don't know, thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands of years. Always do your best. Don't make assumptions. Don't take things personally, and be impeccable with your word. Those are 4 truisms that will turn you not only into a great leader, but a great human being, which honestly, the 2 are inextricably woven. And my second favorite leadership book is by a think tank called the Arbinger Institute, and it's called Leadership and Self-Deception. And they do conflict resolution research. You know, that's what their think tank is about. And ultimately what they want to do is kind of help solve some of the world's bigger problems. And they try out their theories in smaller circles, like on teams and in corporations. But their book, Anatomy of Peace and Leadership and Self-Deception are 2 books that are very similar, that teaches us that we have to be our best selves in order to be leaders. And a lot of times we get triggered by circumstances or other people, and those triggers put us into what they call boxes. And there are 4 boxes. There's the better than box, the less than box, the need to be seen as box, and the I deserve box. And those boxes might sound eerily familiar, even if you've never heard of the Arbinger Institute, because we're all in them every day. Even the best of us look at someone else and go, I'm smarter than they are, than that person. I deserve to be more successful. Or, oh, I'm around all these people from Beverly Hills. I need to be seen as, whatever, right? So it's not necessarily, it's human to go into these boxes. What a leader though does is recognizes when he or she is in the box and like kind of shakes it off, and gets out of the box and realizes we're all just human beings and we're going to relate to each other better if neither of us are in a box and we can talk in an empathetic and real way. So those are my
Well,
kind of favorite books.
I have to tell you, when you said the I deserve box, I'm like, anybody who puts themselves in that, I'm going to smash that box. Because let me tell you something, you either earn it, you work for it. Nobody deserves something. I believe old school way of you gotta work for it. You gotta earn it, and you've got to be authentic in your intention of how you interact with others. And so, yeah, I know Sean also has that same belief too.
Well, I do. I also, I know, and you just said it, and it was such a great quantification, because I jump in each box multiple times a day, you know, and I'm like, and then there are moments where, to your point, you have to shake yourself out of it. You recognize, okay, I'm kind of a stick in the mud. There's no movement, there's no fluidity. I'm cutting myself off. And it's that empathetic energy exchange, that transfer of energy of consciousness and awareness and care that transforms people in conversations and makes real connection where real information and communication can take place. So I think there's just a genius understanding of that. And the more that people can accept that they really basically move in those 4 boxes throughout every single day. And the objective is to get out of the box as much as you can. But that's a conscious effort, right? That requires a lot of discipline and practice and awareness.
Absolutely. And that's what I help a lot of leaders do in one-on-one executive coaching, is figure out, you know, what habits and patterns of thought were formed years ago and remain in their subconscious and are informing their decisions and their interactions. And, you know, it's not dissimilar to unconscious bias, which is another big theme that we've been seeing, you know, to sort of harken back to your previous question. Lots of organizations looking to hopefully take the check the box mentality around diversity, equity, and inclusion and turn it into more of an active reality. But you know, our filters sometimes are around the bias that we grew up with, just we weren't even aware of, and now that we're adults, we can become aware of them. And other situations, you know, when that happened in like elementary school, like we didn't get picked first for the kickball team or something, like, you know, those things have psychological imprints on us that we may have been brushing under the carpet for years, but they show up as need to be seen as box. I need to be seen as worthy, or, you know, perfectionistic tendencies, for example. And Jay, you know, this is another one of those things that you and I have in common. It's like, you know, personally, I know where mine comes from after many years of looking for it. Is as a child, I was given praise when I excelled in school, and that meant getting 100% on my tests and not having any errors. I mean, it was to the point where when I was a kid, you know, before we had computers and you could just backspace over your mistakes, like if I was writing something and I misspelled something, it wasn't good enough to erase it and just write over it, because I didn't like to see the erased piece. I crumpled up the paper and started over. I was that much of a insane perfectionist, and that haunted me and held me back for years, because 80-20 rule, right? You know, if I'm spending 80% of my time dotting I's and crossing T's that don't matter, I'm losing.
Right. No, that's totally true. And back to the whole, you had a great interview on your podcast for the LeaderShift show for the executive recruiter for Google, and or she's on the leadership team for Google. What an amazing interview.
Jenny Clark.
And by the way, and your podcast, by the way, is quite amazing. You have had some wonderful, wonderful influencers on your show. And if you want to follow or listen to a great podcast, it's so very relevant to today, is a LeaderShift show that Shani is. And I was actually one of your original interviewers back when you started, like 1.5 years, 2 years ago.
Yep.
And I think podcasts are such a wonderful way in this time to fill. And I try to listen to something interesting whenever I'm doing anything that is, you know, that's mindless, like cleaning something out or doing the dishes or a project of some sort that I'm
We're
just driving
on the 405.
Yeah, fortunately, the traffic hasn't been that bad around here lately, to be
True.
honest with you, even though it has gotten a little bit worse. But to listen to something effective, and I know like Gunnar was on that one, and I listened to that podcast before, with the Tony guy, the MMA fighter and trainer guy. And so like listening to these
Yes.
shows are just so interesting because it's like having conversations without being around other human beings. So it's kind of a good quarantine exercise.
Right. Yes. Well,
And your
thank
book
you for
was
the
great
plug
too.
on my podcast.
Well, yeah. Well, and also, I mean, your Better Boss project. I mean, what a brilliancy in tying in, some really deep moments of your life into, and your life experiences, like you were saying, all of your life experiences led you to creating what you create now and able to teach what you teach now. And as they say, older, wiser. And so
Yes.
that it really is true. As we live through life experiences, I think is where true authentic wisdom comes from. It's
Yep.
like I thought I knew everything in my 20s, and I realized now in my 50s, like, you know what? I thought I knew a lot then. I actually know a lot more now. So it's kind of funny how that evolves.
Absolutely.
So I was like, I understand. I don't know. He has some innate spiritual wisdom that I don't know where that comes from, because I know he always says it comes through him, not from him. But it's always interesting to listen to.
Well, it's actually very much in line with what we're discussing. It's this idea of openness, right? And just kind of an awareness, self-awareness, and looking at, you brought up something, Shani, that I think is so critical. And that's understanding the fundamental blocks that we build our psyches on, life experiences, and more often than not, it's traumas.
Yes.
It's interesting when you reflect on somebody's life. It's very easy to remember the things that upset you about them, and it's a little harder to remember all the good things that made you happy about them. And it's kind of weird because it made you imbalanced in your ego. You were upset about something and you kind of maybe buried it like a little pearl, like a little grain of sand, and you just pearled it up and it sits there until you deal with it. And I know that through the day and day, the objective in my mind has always been to lower and lower and lower and lower that, so that I can look through the eyes of all of those around me to understand myself better. How am I perceived here? How am I perceived there? And try to make it so that I can similarly reflect backwards to those people, my honest impressions. It's not always easy. It's often very painful. And when we look in the mirror, it's the most painful because it's so much more real. So when I listen to what you do for mindset, really, because so much of it is about addressing and using exercises to walk people through these experiences of their lives and understanding where's that roadblock, what are these things that are keeping you from this, that, and the other thing, or helping you clarify it. It's as if at a really high professional level, you're offering people who are already high level, high performance people the chance to really expand and grow and bring other people onto the boat with them, so to speak. So I think it's
what
very
you're
impressive.
speaking to, and Jay just mentioned my book, I have it here. So the first chapter so here's the Better Boss Blueprint, available on Amazon. Chapter 1, and so it's 10 chapters, and it's 10 things that as a better boss I commit to ... and the 10 things. And chapter 1 is I commit to work continuously on having my own shit together. Leadership starts here. And we can't help others and that doesn't mean we have to be perfect, or else no one would ever be a leader, right? But having self-awareness and self-authority. So there's a few pieces of that. So self-awareness is, what are my strengths and weaknesses? What are my core values? And self-authority is knowing that you have the ability to choose. And even though you might be triggered or upset, and that the animal instinct that we still have as human beings, the reptile brain, is the first to respond, that we go, whoa, okay, thank you for the warning. And then we pause so that we can respond differently. We can respond creatively. We can respond as that person who has done the work and knows his or her values and knows what really matters, instead of launching into a box or any of the behaviors that don't serve us as examples of, when we're leading.
So true. And that's the thing. Sean and I are like the mom and dad really of like our company, right?
I know.
And it's rewarding, but it's also like we have to be unified. Like mom and dad have to be on the same page, right? About how we conduct ourselves and how we help and how we engage, et cetera. And the beauty of complete opposites that have this baseline of just unity and I think foundationally the same person helps significantly and has obviously in the longevity of our ability to stay partners, to be business partners, to be best friends, and having all that incorporated into a business practice. That I think that's very rare to find two people that are so completely different, but have that same heart. I think the empathy and the care and each person wanting to do better want it to be easier for their partner. It's that constant, how can I make it easier for him? And he's always thinking, how can I make it better for her? And it's like that daily thing of supporting another human being. And I think that also goes from being like a boss. The boss, like what I remember from 70s and 80s, it's such a disgusting different blueprint than what being a boss means now. Like I was raised in that era of like, you got whipped, you got to get your work done. And it's that constant harassment that was supposed to produce these results, when in hindsight now, it's like, how much compassion, how much empathy, how much see-through vision can you have of what that your employee or your team is going through, and understanding from that perspective. I did not know that I was that intense, like workaholic slave driver in the 90s, and realizing in the last 20 years, like, wow, you really were not a good boss, because you thought by showing by example, being the passive aggressive of being the first one in and working this hard and expecting everybody to work that hard, that's not natural.
Yeah, well,
it really
isn't. What you're speaking to is common. The command and control leadership style was not just the 70s and the 80s. It was even before that, and so it's like our generation of leaders. We grew up under the umbrella of a command and control, very, like the hierarchical kind of structure. So it's like we didn't know any differently, and that's part of what I untrain in organizations is that. And another book and author, again, I keep like going back to some of the questions as I think of new things that it relates to this particular topic, is Daniel Pink. His book that's been out for a long time now, 10 or 15 years, called Drive. He says what really drives performance is autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? People want to have some control over their own destinies. Even if they're being provided some guidance, they want to be able to do it their own creative way. Mastery, they want to keep growing and learning and getting better and getting promoted, right? Nobody wants to sit and just, make the same widget every day. And purpose, and that's where the vision comes into play. And leaders who can provide those three things are going to have much more motivated, loyal, innovative, fill in the blank with all the great adjectives type of employees.
Well, I think that's the evolution, right? And I'm grateful to have, like you, read so many great books about, self-evolution and self-awareness. And I think it does start a lot of that from understanding that. And as we know better, we do better. And I can't beat myself up for how I was when I didn't know any better, but what I can be responsible for is how do I do now as I know better? And as I learn and evolve and grow, how can I'm sorry for who I was then. I'm not that person now. I'm a completely different human being than when I was 16 years old. I'm a different human being than I was 26 years old. Mm-hmm. And the fact that now as I know better and learning, especially from like talking with Sean and the downloads that we have and having a bounce board and an awareness of thinking that I can be more empathetic. I can be less structured. I can, kind of come from the place of how can I help you kind of get to that other side versus what are you up to and what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it's like it's a very different way from the way I was parented to the way I even parent my children. And like, look, I just want to communicate with you. Can I express to you what your actions, just the consequences of that was by not communicating, and how can we move forward from it versus
Right.
you messed up, and I like, that's not constructive for anybody. It just makes everybody feel bad. So like learning those kinds of things, so it's fascinating.
For what it's worth, Jay, I actually celebrate all that growth. I mean, who you are now is a byproduct of who you've been in the past and what lessons you learned. And someone instilled the Energizer Bunny on crack inside of you. And so, you go and go and go and go. And I think that is part of your upbringing. And I think that is part of your innate drive. It was what you were hardwired with, but your evolution as a person and your involvement in terms of just awareness and openness. That's the key, right? There's this openness. You don't need to be right. It's you need to be open and fluid and realize that there are many different ways to perceive things. I just see these tremendous qualities in you. I actually celebrate it because you are such a fantastic person. I look at those fundamental blocks and I go, maybe everybody could use a dose of it. Maybe not as a heavy dose as you got, but maybe everybody could use a little dose of that in their foundation while they're building and growing.
Right. Well, and I'm sort of only a slightly biased bystander. And what I can say is because of the chemistry between you two and the growth that you have prompted in each other, that's why Heyler is so successful. And Sean, I don't know your kids, but Jay, I know your kids. And like, that's almost an even bigger testament to what a high quality human being you are. And in the way you parent with Larry is, I mean, your boys are just incredible young men. And that doesn't happen from parents who are, overbearing. It happens from parents who are empathetic and aren't making assumptions and are open and letting their kids be who they are.
Well, last week it was Paul that cried. This week it's me.
Okay.
I tell you.
Got her, Misty. It's gonna get her every week. That's awesome.
Oh, well, let me tell you, Sean subsequently, and I know you don't get to know his kids, but holy cow, talk about amazing kids. Jordan, Juliet, and Charlie, and Cammie are all just outstanding human beings and smart and hardworking and boy, ballers. They have baller status, okay? My kids are good kids, but Sean's kids, boy, they've got swagger, okay? Especially Jordan. And so that's a whole nother level of just confidence that he's infused into his children. And I see that with his kids, and it's amazing.
I thank you for that. And I will say this, I know that we all feed on different things. Sometimes we need water, sometimes we need sunlight, sometimes we need warmth. And it's kind of my job at some level as a parent, and I try to translate this into my everyday life. How can I take those energies and share them with everybody? If I can shed it on my own children, how can I make someone else more positive? And I recognize that the most delicate fruit in the universe, so to speak, is the esteem of a child. They're just so small, they're so tuned in, they're so vibrant, they're so connected to every movement. They hear your heartbeat. And so when you beat them down, it just creates this pressure. And I look at it and go, no, I need to liberate that. I need to prune it. And let me tell you, I'm a hard-ass disciplinarian. I have dragged my son in a car. I literally drove him in the middle of one night at 11 o'clock at night to several girls' houses. And he had to go to apologize to the parents and the girls, and I was like, you're not going to be a player like that, son. This isn't going to work. And it was a hard lesson.
That's a topic for another podcast.
Listen, if you invite me on your podcast, Jay will tell you, I've got about 1,000 of those. I mean, I can just start whipping out stories. But yeah, it's just accountability, and it's just in human nature. And I'm grateful for it. The collaboration with Jay gives me this incredible base to work from. It gives me the freedom and right to not only earn, we talk about this in the show a little bit here, that Heyler, perpetuates not only the show, but it creates our lives, and it allows us that freedom to contribute where we can contribute. And on a day like today, which can be a very solemn day, you think about it and think, okay, how can I flip that? I'm going to make it a day of service, right? I'm going to make it something that's going to be, how can I do something to better the world I'm in? I'm not going to accept that negativity. I'm going to go ahead and shift it. I think our conversation is super topical. I'm super excited to have had you on the show. I'm really interested in just spending more time and conversing with you, because I can just, you're already blowing my mind. And I love that. I love when people stretch just through the expanses of my mind, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Shani's kind of smart, I think, She's a pretty cool chick.
Yeah.
I knew that from day one.
She got it going on.
We've got a visitor too on Facebook Live. We have TJ. This is my baby.
Yeah. Maybe a little reluctant.
To the Facebook universe, and today, Sean.
Hi, Cuddles. Hi, full of love. Beautiful.
Well, girl, thanks for coming on our show today and sharing your wisdom. I mean, it's just even a sliver of how talented you are and what you do out in the world. And that's why before the shutdown, I know you were traveling all over the world to offices from Korea to Dubai to Japan. I mean, you were flown everywhere to help these teams grow. And thank you for coming on.
Yes. God willing that, all that travel will resume, because I love it. But in the meantime, I'm happy to be here in Boulder with, sort of it's not really a rock climbing wall, because it's too easy. But that's my big passion. And that's what I'm getting ready to go do this weekend.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
we can go into that
now,
conversation.
and I'm packing my car with camping and climbing gear and meeting a group of people to go to Southern Colorado.
Awesome. Well, be safe and have a great time.
I will. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for having me on your show. I love you both. And we'll see you soon. I will make it out to LA soon, I promise.
Love you. Bye.
Bye, sweetie. Thank you.
Well, I tell you, I mean, talk about when you say solemn. I mean, I'm thinking about the firefighters and the wildfires we've been experiencing here in the state of California and many states. I mean, it's been the greatest number of wildfires that many areas have ever experienced, right? I mean, this is
I think it was earlier this year, or maybe even it was the end of last year, that Australia was on fire, right? Like the whole damn continent was on fire. And I saw a photograph maybe this morning, or it could have been yesterday, and it was a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge, and in this incredible reddish orange hue fog of smoke, and similarly that same image of the bridge in Sydney. And it was that parallel. And I knew that, I mean, Australia's forest fires were like unprecedented. We'd never experienced anything that on Earth, but now California is there. I do know that the fire in Northern California is the single largest fire in California history, which is a terrible distinction. Oregon, Washington, we've had friends evacuate their kids out of their universities at U of O and Washington. Wow. And you already think about a state or two that are in great dynamic social change, and then you throw this kind of calamity on top of it. It's devastating, and it's sad for wildlife. It's obviously tragic for people who lose their lives, and what it takes. And of course, we lose habitat and forest, and it's a real toll. And I mean, as you know, you step outside, I wouldn't go jogging out here. It would be like, no, I'm not going to be breathing that. That feel like you'd be smoking a pack of cigarettes. So I think it is something to always be conscious and aware of, and supportive, where you can be supportive of those types of organizations and people, whatever it might be. These are heroes that go out and fight these battles, whether it's a fire or a rescue of any sort. Well, heck, even our officers and these people all need to be recognized as doing something for the greater good. And
I know, because today's National Service Day, and it's like I think about like how can I even help and contribute and be of service, even to our local station 92. And I know people always like, oh, what can I do? Well, I tell you one thing that they appreciate are healthy snacks, not the leftover Doritos and the cakes and so forth, but something paleo, something that's going to fuel them in a very effective manner versus slowing them down, no sugar, no carbs kind of a thing. I had baked them a couple dozen of my banana bread muffins, and
Those are fabulous.
boy, they love that because just straight protein, eggs, bananas, almond flour, and coconut oil.
Right.
So there's no dairy, packed with protein, no gluten, and it's a very effective fuel to get going. And I make that for my kids. But when I have a whole batch of extra bananas and I make an extra couple dozen, I take it over there. I know that they really appreciate it. So maybe we should reach out and see how we can help them.
That's a wonderful idea. I know my wife has an energy cookie. She calls a monster cookie. It's not quite as good as those. Your banana muffins, those paleo banana muffins, are actually exceptional. Like they are a whole strata by themselves. Well, because you can eat them and there is 0.0 guilt, like no headspace where you're like, I can keep eating these. I can actually have 4 or 5 because it's not hurting me. This is all protein. This is my body working. I've got the fats and the oils and
no sugar. The sugar straight from the bananas.
From the banana, but it translates and it gives you this great satisfaction. I mean, I'm actually salivating. That seems to happen every show too. We talk about either something that emotionally makes us cry, or I start salivating about some kind of food. But yeah, I suppose that would be
to bake some, drop them off.
Definitely to share with the message with people that are out there and the ones that we know and love, and make sure that they send some kind of messages and thoughts and keep people like this in mind during these times for sure.
It's been such a roller coaster. I feel like we've had so many great, amazing moments that have obviously occurred, which is just our day-to-day life of great accomplishments. But then, boy, talk about it's like the 1-2s keep coming sometimes, and I just wish I don't want to feel so helpless sometimes in wanting to see who needs help, and I know we do a lot for the community, but it's a never-ending quest to make sure that, can I do more? Can I help more? Is there someone I can impact in a better way today? And thinking about so many people that are suffering, and me feeling like, wow, I mean, I have a 4-hour inspection to go to today for the accepted offer we have, and got 5 more listings in the queue coming up for October. And it's like, there's so many great things happening, but then, wow, there's so many people that are in distress and in need of help, so.
It's really true. And I think that there's, I think our guest was fantastic for this, because the idea of leadership shift, right? Like shifting with what's taking place, being able to see this and go, okay, it's daunting. Like you say, there's a conveyor belt. We've worked very hard to come to this place, and we're working with people that trust us. And that trust is, our word. It's everything. It's one of the 4 tenets of the agreements. It's this idea. So we, in creating balance, right, and creating that is there's a certain amount of being super present in the moment, recognizing there are things that are beyond our control, but doing what we can within our control, whatever that may in fact be. And I actually recently saw a group of ladies that missed their bus, and it was on a Sunday. So there were 3 women that looked like they were going to go do some housekeeping. They had missed the transition, and that other bus took off. I drove up right next to them. I put on my mask. I said, jump in, and I whipped them in front of that bus so that they could catch their bus and make their connection, and they could have a productive day. It wasn't a big deal. It's a little something. It took me 5 minutes out of my way. But in their lives, it may have made a positive, and there was this interaction of just positivity, right? So it's just a matter of, but you have to recognize the moments. There's actually a little stirring, like you just get this little bing, I could do something about it. And that's when you have to take action, right? That's when the moment is stirring you and says, okay, I'm going to go do something about that. And, we do a ton. It's so funny because our social media manager had come in and said, hey, by the way, do you guys have pictures of you guys doing things in service? And now both you and I have a lot of things we've done in service. If there are 2 photos of me, that's 2 more than I know of. Like, I don't have any pictures. But then I look at all the things you're doing. I'm going, oh shit, when could she actually work? Like donating here, donating there, over here, over here, over here, over. And it's just amazing.
You do a lot. You just don't document it. You don't take photographs of it, because your authentic spontaneity of how you help people, it's a whole nother level of you're giving to give, right? And it's not for the recognition. It comes straight from your heart. I give to give too, but there just happens to be people who want to have pictures of it or document it. But it's the things of when you give the shoes off your feet to someone else because you know you have many more at home to go home to, or when you help that old lady cross the street and she was stuck and traffic wasn't stopping for her and you help her cross, or like you said, picking up these folks because you noticed that they missed their bus and you driving them to help impact their life in a, like the random acts of kindness that you do, it's not documented, but you do it every single day. And I know from getting to talk to you and knowing the things that you do selflessly every single day. And I know there's a lot of selfless things you do for me that I may not even be aware of, some of the extraordinary things you go out of your way to make sure that I'm okay and that my life is better. That's what you do. You do that for your kids. You do that for your wife. You do that for your family. You do that for your friends. Now I'm going to cry, but I know you're at, you know, people's bedside as they're leaving this life, you know, to make sure that their passage, you know, from this life was as calming and as comfortable as it can be. So no, those are not photographic moments, but I know the things that you've done selflessly to impact other human beings in a positive, meaningful way. And that is something that that is not going to be photographed or documented.
Well, I appreciate that, Jay. It's very nice to hear, and the recognition of it sometimes it's important too, right? That's part of what we're talking about, is this idea of what feeds us. And I don't do it for that, to your point, but to know that somebody does understand that is important. And I think that's also to share with the audience. I think both you and I live that way out loud. There is this is not self-promotion. This is not, it's in fact quite the opposite. It's selflessness. It's this idea of, I want to make a better life. I remember that so clearly when you bought your home, when you sold your townhome and you bought your home, and you were going to just make a life for you and your boys and your husband that was going to be different than what you had. And now you've achieved that in a really high level. And now it's this idea of, okay, what can I do next? And so it's first, helping with the first responders. It's helping with, like you said, the fire department. I mean, that goes a long way. Let me tell you, the fire department's wonderful while they're just around and whatever, and you pull over hopefully to the side as they go by. But when you need them, oh dear God, you want them to be there. And the quality of men and women that we have serving in our local fire department is spectacular. So just acknowledging people like that, or even our proprietors, other businesses, and supporting them. Just saying, hey, we recognize these are tough times. These are odd, funky, strange things we're all going through. I mean, like, as if it couldn't get weirder, we're under this incredible pallor now of smoke on top of COVID. Like, okay, what's next? And I don't mean that. I don't need it to come, right? But I mean, but meanwhile, what's super interesting too is that professionally, it's still dynamic and fluid and busy. Like, I look at the day and they just kind of blur by, like, holy smokes. And I look at my checklist and there's probably any given day at least a dozen to 20, and I'm cranking through them. And I'm like, and then another dozen comes right in the queue. Now, I'm grateful for it. I know you're grateful for it. It is wonderful to be needed and wanted, and to do business as far and wide as we do, to have clients who are searching in the Northern Bay Area, that people that are searching are finding homes, and in our community and in East and in the desert. I mean, we will help anyone we can, wherever we can. And it's fun to do, and it's exciting and dynamic, but it's taxing. It can be a little exhausting. But the rewards are fantastic, and seeing everyone else flourish is really important too. And I'm just grateful to have the show with you every Friday. This is a wonderful point in time. I'm sorry for the delay today. I had some issues that I was really pushed up against with time. I popped on when I did, but I'm grateful for you being there and set up, because you set it all up. It's like this giant, come on in, table's already set. All you need to do is actually eat. So go ahead and eat. That's all you have to do. Yeah. I got it all served up. In fact, I'll put it on a conveyor belt. All you just go, right. Food analogies. I use food analogies.
Well, and for me, it's kind of like the perfect game of volleyball. Now, the best way I can be the best partner to my player when I'm playing volleyball is when I'm setting her the ball, I want it to be a perfect set for her so she can put the ball away. And as your business partner, I try to set it up the best I can because I don't want to give you a bad set. I want you to hit a good set. And so that's, you
No,
know,
you do.
again, it's back to
No.
the teamwork analogy. You know, we each have our areas that we pitch in, and that's why being a part of a team is so important to me. Having you as my partner is so important to me, and being able to impact and help people with our level of care and truly wanting to just take care of people at our core. That's just I think that I flourish and I thrive on just being able to impact people with the knowledge and experience that we have in a positive way.
Yeah.
And,
no, it
and on
makes
that
sense.
note, happy National Day of Service.
All
Go
right.
out and serve someone. I know I'll be up in Topanga for a few hours, so enjoying doing that and helping
All
them
right.
fulfill their dreams. So
Stay hydrated, stay safe, and we'll talk later.
yes,
Bye, guys.
bye.